Previously on the Jay and Dan podcast.
I mean, I can perform in front of a camera. I can play hide and seek. I could start a YouTube channel.
You should start YouTube.
Because if I want to play in the a-hole,
He had another side, like the there.
Can we get a
Or he does his first touchdown call and he's like,
Wait, what?
I do highlights of an NHL game, and some guy will show up in the highlight pack, and I'll say it. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Producer Tim will like, he's been in the league for 3 years. You don't know Frankie Baragano?
You're not familiar with Andre Fakakishvov? Everyone was like at swimming lessons or whatever. He's like, he's got no pubes. He's bald. And I was like, I'm bald down there too.
Wait, what kind of testicle is this?
What was your response to like, oh, what a loser?
Oh yeah, big time. Half my adolescence is, oh yeah, that guy. I'm all chestnutty brown in the pube area.
Okay.
You're listening to the Jay and Dan podcast.
Brought to you by YouTube.net. Dance.
We're almost done April.
You okay?
I'm going to be really phlegmy.
Oh boy.
Because I had my standard Mr. Sub on a Monday, followed by a big 500 mil chocolate milk.
I knew it. Like a nice chocolate milk to wash down that 12 inches sorted.
Now I got the spicy chicken. I think it's standard, right? Everyone gets chocolate milk with the sub, right?
I never have done that. I like chocolate milk, but that's not my standard order. I haven't been to Mr. Sub in a long time.
You're missing out.
How many Mr. Subs are left? Like
tons. There's actually a lot.
Yeah, where? They ain't downtown.
You should go over to the one here by work.
No, I've been Prim, right?
Yep.
He's the
but
guy
they've renovated it, so they have a new mural in there.
Ooh. Just a
street,
bunch of meats?
A street shot of their first ever location, which was in Yorkville in the 60s.
Oh, cool.
And every person in the picture, like it's a busy street, it's black and white. Everyone's a pimp or the coolest guy I've ever seen. I can't tell.
Yorkville in the 60s, because Yorkville now, for those who don't know Toronto, is like the swanky shopping district with all the high-end stores. But in the 60s, it was like the hippie area where the flower children were.
A lot of leather jackets with big lapels.
Yeah, I like that.
They're all just hanging out in front of Mr. Sub.
Yeah. Hey, guys, who wants to... Hey, man, peace and love, brother. Let's go get a 6-inch meatball in my gullet after dropping some acid.
And you gotta get that chocolate milk.
Oh, you ain't had that shit, man? It's everywhere. It's groovy, man. It's a trip. It's milk, and they add chocolate to it. Oh, yeah, brother. That's what was going on in the 60s in Toronto.
There's a big subculture.
Yeah, I haven't been to that Mr. Sub, but that Mr. Sub has fed a lot of TSN people over the years, for sure. Right across the street, Prim running the show. And he's also the guy who kind of has the 411 on the rest of the businesses in the mini mall across the street from CTV here. And he has the 411 on Local 44, which is a restaurant we have been quietly fascinated by since we returned from California. Because, what did it start as? What was it? It was a Montana's. It was a Montana's. That went out of business. And then some guys went in there.
And they made it into a King's Head or a King break. What they called stuff? It was a pub at some point.
I'm not 100%
King's Head,
sure.
I think.
Fish Head
I will
Pub.
look that up.
And then that went under, and then it closed for a while, and then it became Local 44, and then that closed.
But they're back open.
And now it's open again as Local 44. Bottom line, that is a front for money laundering, for sure. But you actually went there.
I went there once.
And
that was
pretty exciting experience.
I discussed it on the podcast. I said the lighting.
That's right. Not good. Too bright?
Fluorescent bulbs.
Oh, yeah, you can't have that. You can't have that at Local 44. Bottom line is, you want to come out for a night on the town. You come straight to downtown Scarborough. You go to Local 44, and afterward you get dessert at Mr. Sub. A 500 ml chocolate milk.
No, they got cookies. They got...
Freshly baked?
Yeah. And if you go in there at the right time, and they're about to close up, Prim will give them to you for free.
Yeah. Prim right now is like, you, Dan. You. Next thing you know, there's a lineup at like 8:59 p.m. every night at Mr. Sub.
And there used to be a Bible shop over there. Now it's a hot yoga or something. We thought it was going to be a weed store, but no, they went from the Lord to yoga.
It was slated to be a weed store, right? In the Kathleen Wynne government. And then Doug Ford came in and said, hey, let's privatize it all. Which is the one thing Doug Ford has done that I'm really happy about.
But they had no plan in place. Everything was all set up, and now it's...
Yeah.
Like there's 2 stores open in all of Ontario.
2 legal stores or something. I think, do they have some legal ones in Brampton, home of producer Tim?
I believe there's one open in Brampton right now.
Oh, Tim's probably working behind the counter during the day.
It would be a fun job.
I would love it. I mean, your clothes would really stink of weed after a while.
You wear just a black shirt, black pants every day. Same outfit.
Just leave it at the weed shop, change into it like Mr. Rogers. I'd wear... Yeah, what would I wear if I worked at a weed shop? I'd wear a suit. I'd have one suit, and I'd wear it. I'd be like the guy behind the desk at the Continental in the John Wick movies. That's what I would wear.
No, you go
I'd
take
wear
a picture.
A suit as a weed guy.
Take a picture of the guys who are hanging out in front of Mr. Sub. You dress like them, you're selling a lot of weed.
I think regardless, no one's coming into the weed shop and saying, ooh, I don't like the way that guy's dressed. One thing I remember hearing from a friend who used to frequent the weed shops in California is that they deliberately would staff those weed shops with cute girls. Right. Because the premise was that they would put people at ease, sort of like, that people who maybe hadn't been to one before and were maybe a bit intimidated or whatever.
And they're like, girls talking to me?
What? Yes, I'd like a jazz cigarette. One, please. To go with my sub and milk that I purchased. This guy's English for some reason.
Speaking of weed, so I mentioned before how I'm going to Amsterdam this summer.
Yeah.
Guess who I spoke with on Saturday to make a confirmation that they were going to be there? Jim Pearl,
In
our
fact,
former state champ.
so happy.
Should we call him right now? Let's call him right now. Let's talk about it.
Sure.
Stoff, can we do that?
Sure.
Let's give him a quick call.
And you know why I did call him? Because me and a lady friend were talking about, well, if we're getting tickets to museums and stuff, should we get a third ticket? 'Cause you don't want to leave him out. And he says, yeah, I'll pay
He's
you.
in.
I'll pay you back. And I said, I got a strict 1 museum a day rule.
I don't even think you're going to make it to that.
But they call me, that's why they call me 1 Museum O'Toole.
They call you One Gallery O'Toole.
He drinks at lunchtime.
He's going to be doing more than that. It's going to be fun. Oh, man, I'm so jealous. You guys are going to have so much fun. I don't think you're going to leave. Because you're going there first and then Paris after, right?
Correct. And then Zurich. And
I hope you don't prepay for that Paris hotel.
I've already got a Zurich hookup. Danny Hodgson, former Leaf. I know him from Fort McMurray. I went to the Leaf game, actually, with him on Sunday.
Oh,
Sunday afternoon.
name dropper.
No, we've known each other for, 20 years? And he played in Zurich for 5 years. He's like, you want anything in Zurich? It's yours. I'm like, what? He goes, they'll pick you up at the... He goes, I thought I knew Zurich until I met these guys, and they hooked me up in Zurich. So
Look who just wandered into the studio. This is so
Poulin.
exciting. This is our guest for the podcast. It's Dave Poulin.
Have you ever been to Zurich?
That is one of the few places I have not been in Europe.
You played in Europe. Where did you play in Europe, Dave?
Sweden. Yeah.
Oh,
how was that?
That must have been fun.
Totally different. So I graduated from college and I was going to work for Procter & Gamble in international sales.
What?
That was my gig.
Out of Notre Dame.
Out of Notre Dame.
Into Procter & Gamble. Boom.
Good job my senior year in about December. Had a great job offer, international sales.
That sounds fantastic.
Yes, it was 1982. It was starting at $32,000. Company car, the whole bit.
Yeah, pension, everything.
Yeah, it's big.
Wow.
And then graduated, and in June I got a call of someone I didn't know. He was a coach who'd coached college, and he was coaching over there. And he said, word has it you're not going to play pro. I coach in Sweden. I'd love you to come and play for a year.
And so
I called Procter & Gamble and said, international sales, what if I lived in Europe for a year? They said, that would be great. And I went over and lit it up. But played Division I, not Elite Series, so the next series down.
And so wait, were you working still for Procter & Gamble?
No.
Just
I
put
said,
it off.
I'll come in a year, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Put it off for a year.
And they said, well, you're going to live in Europe. That's great for somebody we want in international sales.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it was just that final piece of individual development that I didn't have. And I got over there, and right from day one, lit it up. And my coach was also scouting for the Flyers in Sweden.
Okay.
So each month he was sending my name back as one of the
Watch
top
this
players.
guy.
Yeah.
And so how did it all come together at the end of that season?
Oh, even more bizarrely. So I came back in late February when the season was over. We had a really good year. I went right to Portland, Maine, the American Hockey League. I played 16 games there. And the first game, I had Dave Brown on my right.
Oh, so tough.
And Mel Hewitt on my left. Now, you'd have to hockey DB Mel Hewitt to know that he had 540 minutes in penalties one year, I believe, in the International League. And Dave Brown on my right.
Dave Brown might have been one of the toughest
He was.
players
So you were
of
safe.
all time.
So I was pretty safe. Cruised around, played a half a dozen shifts in New Haven, Connecticut, and thought, well, this is no big deal. I'd get the puck, everybody would go the other way. And then the second night in Hershey on the Saturday night, one of our top centermen got hurt. And that was the break.
Wow.
And I played 16 games in Portland, got called up on April Fool's Day.
That's
And-
hilarious.
Did you think it was a joke?
Absolutely. So it was a Friday morning, April Fool's Day. We were in Duffy's Pancake House in Portland, Maine, and we were all having breakfast. We were heading to New Haven for a game that night. And Duffy comes over and says, Keith Allen's on the phone, general manager of the Flyers. And you're like,
Yeah, come on.
of course he is. Of course he is. And so I went, and he said, yeah, we want you to play tomorrow night in Toronto, but we want you to play tonight in New Haven. So I took the bus from Portland, Maine to New Haven,
Oh my God.
played that night, and had my stick like here, don't come near me, I'm going to the NHL tomorrow.
Yeah.
And flew into Toronto, but I'd never been to a training camp. And so I didn't know one single player on the team. And got to Maple Leaf Gardens, missed the morning skate, walked in the front door of Maple Leaf Gardens with my hockey bag and said,
That's amazing.
I'm here to play.
That is amazing.
crazy.
And like, were you
Crazy.
just like, who do I talk to? Like when you walked in the front door?
Who do I talk to? Where do I go? Where's the locker room?
That is crazy.
Who can help me? And went back to the team meal, and there were about a half a dozen guys straggling at the team meal. And one of them was Daryl Sittler, who'd been traded, of course, to the Flyers. And so I went to my room. My roommate in the veteran NHL days didn't come back to the room that afternoon. I had no idea what he had going on.
He's enjoying Toronto.
Yeah, so he was the backup goalie. We have lost him now. Bunny Larocque.
Right.
Michel Bunny Larocque. So he never did show up. So now I don't even know what time the bus is leaving.
Oh my God.
I don't know anything.
Where were you guys staying at that time?
The Hotel Toronto, the old Hotel Toronto. It was it's still there, right? It's something else now. A Hilton, maybe?
Right
Right by
on
City Hall.
Carlton?
Not by City Hall, but by like University.
Yeah.
There's a Ruth Chris Steakhouse in it now.
Oh, that's
that's
a
a
Hilton. That's
Yeah,
a Hilton.
yeah.
Yeah.
So nowadays, if someone gets called up, someone is there to greet you they
Somebody
hold your
probably
hand,
picks you
right?
up at the airport.
Yes.
Yeah.
They tell
You
you
would
what's
hope.
going on.
You don't get to the front door of Maple Leaf Gardens with your stick.
I just love you in the bag over your shoulder,
Oh,
like
yeah.
this old
Yeah.
school. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And then you call home and say, "Hey, Dad, I've got 2 tickets for you for the game." It's like, "What? You're playing in the NHL?" Like, it's crazy.
And did you have, because were your folks in Timmins? Is
No,
that
they were
right?
here.
Oh, they were in Toronto.
I had grown
okay.
up in the West End.
Okay,
I
okay.
moved down from Timmins. Yeah.
So, and they came with, that must have been
It's crazy.
just
It's
crazy.
absolutely crazy.
Insane.
And now, warm up, you're skating around a warm up and your feet aren't even touching the ice.
Yeah.
You're like in dream.
In Maple Leaf Gardens, you're an Ontario boy. Yeah. This is your debut.
Crazy. And then we had a coach, Bob McCammon, a legendary coach who loved to talk to the people, and there was no glass behind the bench, right? So he could just have a conversation with the people. So I'm sitting there, during the national anthem. He said, "Yeah, I would call this kid up, say, figure out if he can play." And he's telling everybody behind the bench. He's doing commentary.
Amazing.
And we, of course, were the end of the Broad Street Bullies, so we take a penalty the first 5 seconds of the game. So he says, "Go ahead, kid, see if you can play. Can you kill penalties? Go ahead." So my first shift in the NHL was killing penalties.
You're a penalty killer.
Yeah, all the sophisticated science of scouting.
Amazing.
And killed 30 seconds of the penalties, came back to the bench. And then with about 3 minutes into the game, Daryl Sittler stepped on the ice for the first time, and it was actually his second game back in Toronto.
Right.
So the crowd, just the buzz and roar. And he did a little turn up inside the blue line, and I came down the middle, and he put it on my tape, and I went underneath crossbar.
Amazing.
What?
So my first goal, 3 minutes in.
Oh my God!
From
That's bonkers.
Sittler, who was my boyhood
That is
hero.
unreal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you still have that puck?
I do. It's one of the few things, like I don't keep a lot of stuff or have a lot of stuff, but I do have that puck.
Who took you under their wing that year? Bob Clarke was
Crazily
there.
enough, Sittler at first, and Bob Clarke eventually.
Yeah.
Once it was a little.
Did you have to earn it
further in
with him?
Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he sit. That was a weird story. I'll get into that. But to close up on Sittler, I scored a shorty in the second period, so I had 2 goals in my
You're
first
lighting
game.
it
Yeah, but no one knows me or anything. So we get on the team plane. First of all, you get on the bus, you don't know where to sit.
Yeah.
Now you get on the plane, you don't know kind of where to go. So I saw there was a seat across from Sittler. We were chartering back after the game because we played the next night, and so I sat down beside him. And I figured, well, I might as well tell him right now, right? I said, "So, Daryl, I grew up in Mississauga." And he's like, "Oh, okay." I said, "Yeah. You remember when you beat the Islanders in '77?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well," so my buddies and I were watching the game, and we were in 12th grade, and we said, "Well, let's go to the airport and we'll greet the team." So we get up there, and there was like 10,000 people at the airport. And we said, "Okay, this isn't going to work." So I said, "Well, I know where Sittler lives. He lives in Lauren Park, so we'll go to his house." So I'm telling him this story on the plane. And so we went to your house. He goes, "You were the kids on the front lawn sitting on the case of beer?" I said, "Yeah, we were." He goes, "I remember you kids. You were the only ones there." So the whole team went back to his house.
That's so.
And we were there to greet them all, of course. And he was laughing about it.
That's
He was,
amazing.
yeah. So then, in the weird world we live in.
And then he sets you up for your first goal.
Yeah. In the
great.
world, the next night we beat the Islanders, and they're in the middle of their cups. And now we're going into the playoffs, and speaking of playoffs this year, we're 45 points or something ahead of the Rangers. And they upset us and swept us. They swept us, rather, in the first round. Similar to what happened this year all across the board.
Right.
And in my last game, everybody's saying college kid. I was the only college kid in the team. College kid, it's not going to be tough enough. So it was late second period, and everybody said, if you ever get to the NHL, fight in your first game or fight early so everybody knows you'll fight. So guy on the other team whacks me, so I turn around two-hand him. And
This is still the first game?
this is now the fifth game.
Oh, fifth
We're
game.
going to lose to the Rangers and get knocked out of the playoffs. It's 3 out of 5.
Right.
And so I figured, well, I might as well get this out of the way right now. And my agent says, I'm in the crowd, and I see you're dropping your gloves, and I see who you're dropping your gloves with. And I'm saying, no, what are you doing? He said, and then you started to fight. And I thought, holy jeez, this kid can fight. This kid can actually fight. And he said, you're doing pretty good. And then he hit you. And he cut me for like 55 stitches over the eye and let up. It was Ron Duguay.
Ron Duguay.
Didn't know Ron Duguay was from Sudbury. Didn't know he was tough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ron
And so-
Duguay,
What a salad that guy had.
Yeah, well, now
He still does.
He still looks. He doesn't age.
Still got the game.
Yeah, he really does.
So it was
Wow,
it was
Duguay.
very bizarre. So then they said, okay, now we're going to send you back to Portland because we're done. I've got an eye that's closed. And I'm like, I just got to the NHL. So I'm packed up the next day and I'm going back to Portland, and they called me Monday morning and said, we can't send you down because you signed your first contract after a certain date. So now, I had gotten married right out of college, been to Europe, come back, played 16 games in the American League. What do you do? Played 5 games in the NHL. Where do you go?
You take that international sales gig.
You have no idea.
Proctor.
And I had a contract with the Flyers, a new contract. And so I said, I got to buy a car. So I said to somebody in the office, I have to buy a car. Can someone help me? And they said, what kind of car do you want? So I told them. They said, okay, Bob Clarke knows a dealer, so call him. So I'm like, man, he really didn't say like 2 words to me during those 5 games. Is he going to know who I am if I call him? And so I called him. He said, I'll meet you at the dealership on Tuesday night. He walked in the dealership. He said, turn the card over. He's paying wholesale. And I had to sign a bank note. He said, don't worry about it. He's good for it. Like for no reason.
Right.
For no reason. And he said, what are you doing this summer? And I said, Mr. Clarke, I have no idea. No idea. It's been a chaotic last 8 or 9 months. I graduated from college. He said, stay here in the summer and work out with me.
Nice.
And you're looking, I'm like, really? He said, yeah, I'll have the realtor call you. You can sublet one of the guys' condos who's going home and stay here.
Wow.
And it started quite a friendship and quite a mentorship. And it worked both ways because here I was getting a Hall of Famer to mentor me. And he said, but here's the deal. We work out at 7 in the morning, 6 days a week. And you never miss a workout because I'm your workout partner. And he was also looking for someone because no one would train with him. And here was a full-blown diabetic who was a Hall of Famer who was way ahead of his time working out.
Yeah, because most players back then didn't have that workout routine.
And Dan, he was 2.5 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Wow.
And Monday through Friday, we ran 5 miles at the end, and Saturday we ran 8 miles.
Jeez.
And so I did exactly what he asked me to do. And my wife actually went and got a job right away. She had something going on in working, because she had graduated a couple years ahead of me and had worked in the hotel industry. And Bobby Clarke became my closest friend and my mentor.
Did anyone else work out on the team?
I lapped a guy 8 times in a 2-mile run in training camp. And I am not exaggerating. In an 8-lap, 2-mile run,
Yeah.
I lapped a guy 8 times.
Like, when did it
So
start to
it was just
change?
starting.
It was starting.
It was
to change.
just starting.
Yeah.
Because guys now, they take maybe a month off. Maybe, if that. And then they're right back at it.
It was about the end of the era where you came to camp to get in shape.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was the motleyest looking crew on this 2-mile run you've ever seen. One guy's
stripes.
strategy, the guy I lapped wasn't the slowest because one of our players' strategies was to walk a lap, run a lap, walk a lap, run a lap. Because all summer, that's the fastest he had completed it with that strategy.
I'm just taking a totally other direction. How did they break it to you that you guys were going to wear Cooperalls? How did that happen?
I am in an esteemed club that wore them 3 times. So my junior year of college, we got them at Christmas at Notre Dame because Notre Dame was so high profile and Cooperall wanted to show them off.
Right.
So I wore them there. I wore them in Portland, Maine, and I wore them in the NHL.
And did they?
Yeah,
because there's only you guys and the Whalers, right? And because I remember I was playing minor hockey at the time, everyone wore Cooperalls.
Yeah,
Like
right.
It was just sort of assumed that this is what we were going
was the
with.
direction
now.
everybody was going in.
And I understand that it kind of stopped because there was a concern that the pant, like they wouldn't be able to match them up with the uniforms or something.
No, the reason they stopped was because when you hit the ice,
You'd slide.
You slide.
you couldn't stop.
Yeah.
There was no friction, no.
Right.
and they were hot.
Yeah.
They were really hot, and guys liked 2 pieces. And what did stay was the form-fitting pant that you wore under it, because that's basically what today's pant is.
So you and
somebody thought
you
they
and
were the
Ferraro
style.
both wore them.
Ray and I
Yeah.
both wore them. Yeah.
That's amazing.
both
They were
work
going to
here.
be
That's
the
great.
style, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that was gonna be it.
everyone was wearing Cooperalls.
Yeah.
So it was
Those in the XL7s. The helmets.
Super XL
Remember
7s
those?
Were,
Remember them? That was me.
yeah.
That was me.
We talked to you about this, but you played with Pelle Lindbergh.
I did.
And just for those who don't know, just an incredible goaltender, died at the age of 26. Terrible, tragic accident. driving under the influence. What was your impression of him, and where do you think he would have gone had that accident?
Yeah, that's it.
Occurred?
It's very interesting as to where he would have gone. He didn't have a great work ethic, and he was a terrible practice goalie. And he was getting to a point, like his talent was so incredible. And when I came in, the connection of me having played in Sweden, I was always had a thought process for guys who came to our country because I went to their country.
Right.
And I knew how hard it was. And so I always was very respectful of how hard it was. And Pelle was firmly established. And so the year before, he had won the Vezina. He was first-team All-Star. His skill level was incredible. He taught us how to win. Like, we were a really young team. And we'd go into a game, we'd win 2-1, and say, we're really good. No, we weren't. We had the best goalie in the world. And that night was what you did then. We won our 10th game in a row maybe in November, and November 10th. And it was a Saturday night, and you went out after the game. And then you went home. You went out with your families or whatever, and you went home and dropped them off, and then you went out with the guys.
Yeah.
We were at an after-hours club. And yes, he was drinking, but he'd actually had a Mercedes sedan at the game. He didn't play that night, and then went home and got the Porsche Rocket Turbo between. And so this car was illegal in the States, had no pollution controls, no door guards. It was a rocket ship. And he'd promised them he wouldn't bring it over because they couldn't sell it over here. So they don't want people to see it because they can't sell it over here. And he shipped it over in a crate and drove like an absolute maniac. And that was yes, it was drinking under the influence, but the absolute tragedy of it was he drove like a maniac. Like, that's how he drove. And he lived life like that. Like, he did. He told me a story about buying a boat in Stockholm. You're a series of islands. So if you have a boat in the summer, it's like having a car. So he went to buy a boat, and he bought the boat, and he got on the boat with the guy, and the guy says, "Okay, you're all set?" And he goes, maybe not quite. And he said, "Well, have you ever, you know what you're doing, right? You know how to drive a boat, right?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Is this your first boat?" He said, "Yeah, it's my first boat. It was a 36-footer, like a yacht."
Yeah.
And he had no idea. He's in a slip in a marina in Stockholm. But that was Pelle, right?
Yeah.
You don't get a boat. You get a 36-foot yacht.
Yeah.
Like, why would you get a boat?
So the night that it happens, how do they break that news to you? Do they call you guys that night? Do you find out the next day when you show up at the rink? Do you hear it on the news?
No, I broke the news. So I was at the club with him, and I walked out with a gentleman that I still keep in contact with. The two of us were walking out with Pelle. Pelle had two people with him, and there were three people in that car, and he was the only one that was killed. And so that car went one way, I went the other way, and it was 5:30 in the morning. And two of our players lived right around the corner from this club. And three people had followed Pelle and saw the accident. And they knew where our two players lived. So they immediately, when they saw the accident, they circled back to where the players lived and said, "One of your teammates was in an accident." So that player went to the site, and already the police were there and everything. And he went home and called me. And I was a captain. And so that was how I found out. And then I immediately called Bob Clarke, who was out of town, and then I called Mike Keenan. And we had a friend on the police force, and so we found out where he was taken. So I went and identified him. And so now it's 7:30, 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And I sat in the hospital and called teammates one by one. Wow. And told them they had to come to the hospital. And, you know, it's a lesson that I was 26 years old that you learn, and it never leaves you.
For sure.
And, you know, there's days you don't think about it, but there's a lot of days when you do think about it. And then as you move on in sports, in playing, in coaching, in managing, it's a story you tell to make others understand that you can learn from someone else's mistake. And that's how I always introduce it to my players at Notre Dame. I learned a huge lesson from someone else's mistake. You don't have to learn from your own mistake. And, you know, in 10 years of coaching at Notre Dame, I never did have an incident. And I don't know whether that was a part of it or part of the lesson or part of the teaching or part of the, but
Well, it's such a rare event. Like, you think back, you're like, how many times has that happened in NHL history where one guy dies during the season?
Yeah.
Did you guys, what was the next week like? Because you didn't cancel any games, right?
We didn't cancel any games. Our next game was Thursday night. So the first thing we did, we were all at my house all day Sunday. And it was Mike Keenan, arguably at the best I ever saw him, at keeping the guys together and making guys talk. And guys by nature, I mean, we're, in our mid-20s. We're a really young team. And we'd been to the finals. But you don't talk about things. Most of us had 2 grandparents. Mm-hmm. And you don't emote or express well at that age. You're an invincible athlete. You're cool. You're rock stars. You're not going to open up to someone or talk to someone like that. And he made us talk. And that's how it was. And the safest place for us was back at the rink. And then Tuesday night, late afternoon, Clarke called me and he said, "You've got to do the eulogy tomorrow morning."
Wow.
And he said, "I had to do it for a teammate of mine, Barry Ashby, who died of cancer when we played." And he said, "You've got to do the eulogy." And I sat up that night. It was late. And I had this pad in front of me. I didn't have one single thing written on it, not one word. And then around 3 a.m, I wrote the eulogy.
Wow.
Yeah. And I still have it. I actually have the handwritten copy of it. And did it the next day. Couldn't look at a teammate. Like, could not look at a teammate.
Yeah.
Little Swedish church in Philadelphia. And then Glenn Sather called and offered to postpone the game. The next game was against the Oilers. And we felt, and he talked to us, and we felt the best thing was to do was play. And because it was the safest place for us to be, was back at the rink.
You mentioned Mike. Like, how old was Mike when you played for him? Couldn't have been that old, really.
Mid-30s, 34, I think.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
And what was your, putting that aside?
It was.
Because players love him or hate him. There's no in between.
There's no love. No, there was no love.
Right.
There wasn't.
Right.
Steve Larmer, he always raves about him when Larmer talks about him.
Raves about the product at the end of Mike Keenan and what Mike Keenan got out of the talent. Mm-hmm. That's what you rave about. I was at a golf tournament, not a golf tournament, a little golf outing where one of our guys was getting married years later. And we were playing, and 4 of us in the foursome had played on that team. And begrudgingly admitted, and one of them was Craig Berube, and begrudgingly admitted that he got the most out of us and made us what we were. But while you're going through it, miserable.
Right.
Like, expect the unexpected. That was his mantra, right? So right now, he would try and create controversy between the 3 of us, and I'd say, well, I've only been here for about 15 minutes, but I think things are going okay. And, they're pretty relaxed, and it's going okay, and, a little break between the intermission. But Mike would try and, unite us against you to see if it was always something like that.
Like
and I
mind
was the
games.
captain for 4 years.
Wow.
And it was only my second year in the league. So it was always mind games.
Did
always.
you know what going in,
Yes.
like the reputation?
No.
No.
He didn't have one. He
Right.
had never coached in the NHL.
Right.
And he'd coached for 3 years in the American League, where he was under Scotty Bowman. Scotty was in Buffalo, he was in Rochester. But then to break the contract, he went back to the University of Toronto, and then came right to the Flyers from the University of Toronto.
And how far into your time with him were you like, oh, like this guy's a...
Pretty immediately, like pretty much right away.
Yeah.
But we came roaring out of the gate, and we were so young, and so first-year players on that team were Rick Tocchet at 20, Peter Zezel at 19, Derek Smith at 19, just a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Old guys were like 25.
It's so funny how many coaches have come from that
Great
team.
point.
Like
Great
you
point.
and Craig Berube
Yeah.
and Rick Tocchet.
Yeah.
And
Interesting how that happened.
Mike Babcock, he was never as bad as Keenan, but he seems to have softened a bit in his older age, because
I think
he
you-
looked like a tyrant at times, and he
I think
doesn't
you have to
seem
with
that
today's
way.
players, Dan. I really do. I think it's a different gig.
Yeah.
I just do. I think you've got to manage the players more than you had to manage them then.
But do you think, like I was talking to someone about Barry Trotz yesterday, and I was saying, he seems like the kind of coach that everyone would love to play for their entire career, because he systematically is obviously sound and solid and comes with this amazing reputation, but also somehow seems like a player's coach at the same time.
If you do what he wants you to do.
Right.
That's key.
Right.
Right? If if he's in a position, he's going to win the battle. He's got the contract, right? He's going to, and think of how many coaches didn't outlive Alex Ovechkin. Didn't.
Yeah.
Adam Oates, Dale Hunter.
Yeah.
Think of some good guys that went in there and had no chance with him.
Yeah.
So I really like Trotz. Trotz was our minor league coach when I played in Washington. I've known him a long time, and I really like him. I think he is that player's coach. But a player's coach, it's a fine line, because if they think they can walk all over you, they're walking all over you. There's no way that's going to work.
Yeah.
Speaking of respected coaches, how about what Blake Wheeler said about Paul Maurice?
Yeah, that's great.
Said there's no other coach he wants to ever play for.
That's great.
And Maurice seems like a genuine guy where you're like, okay, yeah, I want to win for this guy.
Yeah, he is. He's found that balance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he respects the players, and I think coaches knowing the players and knowing the locker room it's so big right now. Like, I watched Montreal firsthand this year, and I did 35 of their games or something. And the change in their coaching staff, so Claude Julien and Kirk Muller stayed head and associate, and they brought in Dominic Ducharme and Luke Richardson. And Dom Ducharme had just coached Major Junior for a number of years, right? I think that was a factor. The dynamics of the group was so different. And it changed that locker room, and it changed that team. And, you know, when I was with the Leafs and had to hire a Marlies coach, I brought Steve Spott in from Kitchener, because I wanted someone who was just in touch with that age group.
And they said Luke Richardson did a great job with that team, too.
Tremendous. He's the D coach, and he did a great job with him. Really good. Really good.
What was your impression of Winnipeg in the first round?
Incredibly disappointing, because I think they're one of the teams that's really done everything right from the ownership on down. They've had stability in the GM and coaching position. They've drafted well. They've developed well. They've signed guys to good contracts.
Get a little bit of luck, too. They have a bad season when Line A happens to be there for them at number 2. You know,
yes
like
or
it all
no,
just works out.
He might still want his money, but they took a huge step forward, made the playoffs like 4 years ago, got swept by Anaheim, took a step back, and said, we're going to keep doing this right. And Tampa, in many ways, is exactly the same. And they both lose in the first round.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you're like, you know, it's really, really hard to win in this league. That's the bottom line.
It is.
And you got to get lucky, and you got to, I mean, so much has to happen. And it just, and I don't think, you know, the Leafs, you don't know what's going to happen, but you don't feel they're quite as far along as the two teams we just talked about, Winnipeg and Tampa. But hey, maybe their time comes earlier. Who knows?
How do you wrap your head around the end of a season? Because if I get beat out first round, I wake up the next day and say, we got to do that all over again.
Yeah. It's, you know, I lived in the city I played in, and I think I had to suffer the pain of the loss more than guys that just took off.
Get the hell out. Yeah.
I think that's why, you know, people used to say, well, no one wants to, all these Ontario boys don't want to play in Toronto for that very reason you're talking about, right? The long history of not being successful.
I'll tell you what, when I lived in Boston and you were playing the Montreal Canadiens, if you lost to Montreal, you might not go pick up your dry cleaning for 3 weeks. You might not be on your last shirt because you know the dry cleaner is just going to rip you when you go pick up your dry cleaning.
Yeah.
You might have played in the two toughest sports towns in all
right
North
there.
America, Philadelphia and Boston. Like the fans, like Philadelphia fans obviously come with a reputation that is...
I was nervous and I played for the home team.
I have to ask you, so we love to do this word association thing where we have a list of players that you played with, and you just have to say the first thing that comes to mind when we say it. And I always remember my dad, when I was young, saying, Poulin and Prop got traded to Boston. I always remember you guys being like...
Two separate trades, though.
So Brian Prop, just first start with him.
Boy, word association should come faster than this.
It doesn't have to be one word, though.
I just like it.
The unique guy. He's a unique guy. He's from a tiny town in Saskatchewan. And when I met him, he couldn't say hello when you walked in the locker room.
He's that shy?
That shy. Yeah. Like you would say, hey, Proper, and he would look like, look down. And he might be from like Plenty, Saskatchewan. And anyway, a tiny little town, and his dad was a preacher. And he went from that to never stopping talking, to being on the radio, to running for local politics, to, you know, so he probably swung full pendulum through that time. We didn't hang a ton off the ice, But our relationship on the ice was we moved and thought like one. And we were totally different. I mean, I was an undrafted free agent. He was a high first-round pick who made it, young and a big scorer. He was Eastern, I was Western. It was a lot like Ray and I, actually, because Ray and I, the first time Ray and I had dinner together, we're exactly the opposite. But we've somehow arrived at the same place in the way we look at a game.
Yeah.
He was offense, I was defense. He was West, I was East. He was major junior, I was college. He played for really bad teams, I played for really good teams. And almost exactly the opposite.
You mentioned we talked about Pelle Lindbergh. What about Ron Hextall?
Yes.
Calm, quiet, collected, until he got to the exact bandwidth that threw him. Here was his bandwidth. Okay, this was his life down here. Calmest, quietest person. Here was where he had to be to play. If he was below it, he wasn't any good. If he was above it, he was totally out of control. Totally.
Yeah. When he goes after Chelios,
Right.
that one instance, and his tongue is wagging.
Yes.
That's an image that is forever burned into my brain.
So I break my hand in that fight. It's the last game of the year. So I wore a cast for 6 weeks and didn't golf. A little sour myself on that. Walk in the locker room after all said and done, sitting in the corner, all quiet. I look at him, and he's got no gear because he left it all out in the ice. And he's sitting in the corner like this. And I said, what was that?
Yeah.
And he said, what? And I said, what? You just had like total snappage out there. And he looked and he said, oh, Poulin, I just didn't want to shake his hand after the game. Well, you might have just skipped the spot in the lineup then. You didn't have to cause,
Speaking of scrappers, we heard from this guy this week because he said he's a fan of our show. So Chris Nyland, he played with Chris Nyland.
I did. I played with him and against him.
Oh, man.
And the first time against him, I was lined up the left wing position. He was right wing at our end to the right of our goalie. So I had to go out to the point. Punched me as hard as he could.
Oh, no.
Right in the face. The puck dropped, punched me as hard as he could. So the play ends, and I'm reeling, and he skates by and goes, hey, kid, I can't let you just go out to the point there because the coach would get really mad at me. So I can't just let you go out there. You got to be ready for that. And I was ready for the next 13 years. Right? Every
Good life
face-off I took.
lesson.
That is a pretty
Every
good
face-off
life
I took.
lesson.
It was like, okay, I guess you can't let me go out there because it's your job. But, maybe like step in front of me. You don't have to punch me in the face.
He had a bit of skill, too.
He did. I played with him and against him. He's a great teammate. I played with him in Boston. Great teammate.
And you also mentioned Dale Hunter earlier. I'd love to
Yeah.
know your...
Dale Hunter was really quiet. Again, arguably the easiest player I played with. Out of all, I played with really good players because when you were in trouble, he was 10 feet away. He supported the puck as well as any player I ever played with. He was a really good player.
Yeah.
Really good. Underrated, I would say.
I loved when he went to the NHL and wore the same suit and tie every single day.
Well, he had a road suit, so there was 41 games or 42
I
games.
just love guys like that.
Guys had road jackets back then. A road jacket. It was kind of a gray tweed jacket. It's your road jacket.
Who's the best goalie ever played with or against? Exclude Pelle Lindbergh because we already discussed him.
With probably Hexy in 87, I would say. And I played with 3 different Vezina winners, Hexy, Pelle, and Jim Carey. Jim Ace Carey in Washington.
Two.
I
Did
played
he win
with
2 Vezinas?
one. He was out of the league. He was out of the league too quick to win.
Yeah, then he forgot how to stop the puck.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
You played with Olaf Kolzig.
Played with Kolzig. Played with Andy Moog. Who was
we wanted to ask you about Andy.
Andy the Moog Moger was great.
What
did his neck hit the crossbar? Is that
he's so small?
He's pretty tiny. Not Darren Pang tiny, but tiny.
Was he? He seems like he would have been quiet.
He was real excellent troublemaker. Like great troublemaker. Like troublemaker. He could stir the pot with the best of them. His Christmas present one year was his gag gift was a goalie stick with a soup ladle on the end of it because he stirred the pot so bad, and he really could.
I hope we aren't keeping you, by the way.
I might have to get going a little bit here. It's getting
Okay.
crazy.
You can
up
go.
there.
We're watching the Caps and the
Okay, I'll
Canes
ask
here.
you
It's
one-
tied in the third.
I'm asking all tough guys and goalies, but I have to ask, you mentioned again Craig Berube, and man,
Great, awesome.
what a story. in
Great
St. Louis.
teammate.
That job's his now, right?
It has to
Permanently?
be.
It has to be.
Unless he opts out.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because someone else might want.
I mean, there are 4 or 5 jobs available right now. What if he opts out?
When he was chirping at the Jets at the end of game 1, I thought, I don't think you guys should chirp at Craig.
As scary an individual he was.
Still now.
He was.
He still looks like
a great friend, supreme confidence, right off the reserve, Calahoo. And, here's where you get into one of those philosophical situations where if you were to call into our show right now, you'd call him Chief because that's what he goes by.
Yeah.
If you listen closely in St. Louis, if it's a public presser, the local beat writers say, so Chief, Craig, what do you think, because it's not political.
Oh, yeah. No,
but he goes with it.
Yeah.
And that's what he goes with.
And we've talked about that, too.
Yeah, great friend. Really, really, really confident. And surprised that he's a head coach because I didn't think that he could communicate to that big of a group. Communication would be the question, but Rick Tocchet, same thing. Both tremendous assistant coaches, but a head coach has different kind of responsibilities, corporate, that kind of bigger thing, and both have done it really well. Like, I played a lot of golf with Chief, and Chief would tee off at Congressional in Washington, right? Where, the presidents are as blue blood a golf course as you can possibly get. And he'd strut out to the first tee, and he had the long hair going, and he looks like a movie star with the high cheekbones, and he'd be in Ashworth from head to toe, and people would be looking like, who is this guy? Right? He looks like a movie star, but who is he? And he'd just stripe a 2-iron right down the middle off the first fairway, and there's like a luncheon, and so people would be looking, and he'd spin the club and he'd say, Freddie, couples don't hit a 2-iron. A real good friend, and it's fun to see him do well.
Okay. You tell me when you have to go. I'm going to keep
I think this is a disputed goal, so I think I'm going to jump, guys.
Okay, you jump.
I'll join you again at any
This
time.
is a pleasure.
Ooh, this is great.
We're only 1 year into my career.
I know. I have all these other names.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll bring you back last
anytime.
Thanks,
Good fun.
Dave. Really appreciate it. Dave Poulin, what a guy. That was great.
He's on our show, our TV show all the time, and he's all over the network. Just a great human.
Is that the end of the podcast? Can we do what we wanted to do there, Stoff? Can we call Jim Pearl?
Call up Jim, yeah. I'll dial him
Okay,
up right
let's
now.
Very quickly. Just a quick call, and then we'll wrap it up. Here, we'll wrap up the old.
That was a great combo.
I really enjoyed it.
Because we had only touched upon Pelle Lindbergh on our TV show, and that we got to discuss it. That's one of the things I remember getting home from church on the Sunday, and the radio was on, and I heard it on the radio. I was just like, what the f***?
Yeah, it was crazy. He was, he was only 26. So you think of all these goalies who usually peak in their 30s, all
and
these
he had
great
the classic
goalies.
mask. That's how you knew him.
The white mask. I always called it the Mike Liut mask because I was the first guy I saw wearing that mask. But yeah, it was such a tragedy. But can you imagine being Dave at 26 having to deliver that eulogy that you wrote at 3 a.m. the night before?
Having to identify the body.
Oh, my God.
Knowing you're one of the last people to see him alive.
Incredible.
Then you've got to go out and play a couple nights later.
Yeah, it's... he's such an amazing guy. Obviously, you can tell how intelligent he is, and must have the fact that he played in the era he did and was successful, being the kind of person he is pretty remarkable.
Because a lot of went on then.
That's what I mean. Like if he plays in this era, right, where the Mitch Marners of the world are able to play in the Johnny Gaudreaus, that those guys aren't surviving in 1980s NHL. I don't think.
But Poulin and those guys, they had more fun because they got to go out and do things like that.
And now have social media.
Nowadays, people are like, "Oh, look, he's at the bar. I'm going to take a camera photo."
I'll tell you who's going to be people are going to be taking some camera photos in Amsterdam of you and our friend who's on the line. We're late to get to him. It's our good friend, Mr. Jim Pearl.
Jim, are you going to bring a cell phone because you don't have a cell phone?
I don't.
Are you going to bring?
Actually, it came up yesterday.
Okay.
With Sarah, my wife. She wanted me to figure out how am I going to call her. And she thought, well, the hotel is just too expensive, right?
Right, it is.
I looked into it. It's not good. It's not I have to buy a phone and then buy SIM cards, which I don't even know what they are. So, no, that's not going to happen. I just told her,
Just use Dan's phone.
And they don't call.
Just say, I'll write a letter.
Exactly, a postcard.
Yeah, you're going to be sending postcards. It'll be great.
Right.
So
I'm looking forward to it.
This is amazing,
So
Jim.
it's nice to hear Dan's voice. Yesterday, I think it's just Dan and Jay.
Yeah, well, again, you know how my cell phone is. So I was talking to Jim. He's like, I heard one word of that sentence. So I'm just like,
yeah,
let's try this another time.
I talked to my people, Dan. I talked to my people. The can's okay. It's the string.
Okay.
We'll get it figured out.
So, Jim, you're aware that Dan, maybe you're not aware of this, Dan is good for one museum a day. And to be honest, maybe half a museum. And to be honest, just the guard dog at the museum. He wants to make friends with him and just hang with him the whole time. Where do you stand?
Outside the museum.
Yeah, he would probably be fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
But his lady friend would like to go into the museum. Like, will you go in with her?
Yeah.
Jim's on my side.
There's a coffee bar.
Well,
Next door there's a coffee house.
Oh, yeah, there will be.
Yeah.
I mean, now, have you been to Amsterdam before, Jim?
Me, no. I've never been to Europe.
Oh, my
This
God.
is a first for me. I'm actually, I don't know if Dan knows this, so I'm going to go to London and spend 4 or 5 days there, and then a few days in Edinburgh, and then from Edinburgh to Amsterdam and meet up with Mr. O'Toole.
Fantastic.
That's the deal.
Fantastic
Isn't that
trips.
I love that plan.
Jim, any thought? How do you feel about polygamy? Thoughts on just some crazy? You guys share some crazy hallucinogens. One thing leads to another, and suddenly you find yourself in a triad with.
Right. Well, usually you find yourself in a kind of a seedy neighborhood smoking hash with the brother of the girl you want to bang, right?
Right.
Usually how it works.
Yeah, now that's usually the way it works. But in this case, you're going to end up in bed with Dan and his lady friend. Are you prepared for this kind of thing?
It would have to be quite an experience to get to that end, I would think. I mean, yes, I think hallucinogenics would be involved in that somehow. Yeah. But I really don't see that.
But
I see more of a, what is that? A Van Gogh museum for like an hour.
And then you want to go on the riverboat cruise.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. Sarah was yelling at me at that time. Don't forget the riverboat cruise. Okay. So I got that going on one ear, and then I got your phone on the other ear. So that was my case.
My problem with a riverboat cruise is once you're on a boat, you're stuck on a boat.
But you're there's these little kind of smaller boats where you eat, have some wine, and you go at night. It's maybe an hour just to tour through the canals of Amsterdam. That's what you want to do. Just do that.
If they've got booze and food.
You just want to do a little canal cruise. You don't want to do like the full-on. Forget the riverboat. That's lame. No. Let's be honest. You guys are going to the Bulldog the second you get off the train, and you're probably never leaving.
And we'll get a picture of a windmill. So there's a windmill.
Actually, that's what right. Actually, that's what I thought was going to happen, and then there seems to be more involved. You'll probably find me at the Bulldog. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, though the Van Gogh is pretty nice.
Closer. I don't know. Yeah.
Jim, this has been a pleasure. So I guess the thing I wonder is when you guys go to Amsterdam, because Dan will have the social media handle. There almost should be a separate social media account created just for this 3-day trip that you guys take together, because there's going to be so much demand.
Dan's in charge of that.
Yeah, we'll document it on my Instagram stories.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Us looking at looking at art. Us quickly leaving. It'll be good. Okay, well, I can't wait. As I said yesterday when you couldn't really hear me, or actually on Saturday, I will call you from a good landline, and we will connect and discuss our plans before the actual trip in July.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I played golf with a guy today who's from London. And he's, you can't, he was like a elderly Monty guy, like the golfer guy.
Oh yeah.
Colin Montgomery.
He looked like him. Colin, that's it.
Oh, no, so you need to.
An 80-year-old, 80. 5-year-old, huh?
So did you say,
gotta go?
hey, I'm coming over to London in a couple of months. Maybe I stay with you? Or?
He's got a sister over there. I was working on that. You know, he lives here now. It didn't go that. You know, it was going good, and then I started getting into the sister thing, and he stopped talking to me. I'm about to run full on. You know, you could do. You know.
It's always great to talk to you,
That
Jim
was my
Pearl.
day.
Thanks, Jim. And
All
yeah,
right,
I'll,
buddy. It's nice hearing you guys. Nice hearing your voice, Jay and Dan.
it's great hearing yours as well, Jim. And I'll talk to you before the trip.
Okay, buddy.
'Kay.
We're good, I think, as far as dates, right? That's
Oh, yeah,
the only
we're
thing that was
bang
kinda
on.
concerning.
Somehow,
Okay.
you and I figured it out. It's I can't wrap my head around it, but we did.
Okay, great. Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right.
That's
Thanks,
Jim Pearl. Again, if you don't know his backstory, he used to work with us at Fox. He retired during our run there, and we've remained in touch, and now we're going to Amsterdam.
I just love it. He's just, if you go to my Instagram account and look back, I've got some great photos of myself with Jim where I call him the mayor of Los Angeles. And he was the last person I think we had dinner with before we left at the old Chateau Marmont. And they sat us right by the bar. It was really
That's right. We were
a treat.
underneath the bar.
Literally underneath the bar. But anyway, I'm so jealous that you guys are going together. Wish I could come.
Yeah, we still might win the lottery. Then we could all go.
Money isn't the issue, Dan. It's those kids.
Yeah, but then you bring like 3 nannies to deal with the 2 kids.
I could still get 3 nannies, Dan. There's just no way my wife is going to allow me to go to Amsterdam.
My wife.
No. But
with you and Jim Pearl. That's probably not.
And
No,
the-
with Jim, it might be.
and the 2
acceptable.
kids and the 3 nannies and your wife, and then you get the presidential suite.
That doesn't sound too shabby at all.
we go. I
Oh,
think-
that could be a different trip than ones we've had in the past.
Well, thanks for tuning in. It's been real fun.
I gotta say, Poulin was awesome.
He was.
You know who's gonna be excited about this podcast, Toolsy?
Who's that?
Producer Tim.
Oh, yeah, he's a big Poulin guy.
Big Poulin guy. He was
And
calling.
if that doesn't turn your crank,
He was calling him Poulin before he really knew him.
Poulin's in tonight.
Yeah, Poulin's coming on the show tonight. We're like, you.
Poulin!
Yeah. So Dave? Yeah, Poulin. Figure it out. I'm Tim.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.